Liberal Viewer presents.
So it was great to see President Obama elected to a second term last week, giving a victory speech with flashes of the Barack Obama who burst on the national scene at the 2004 Democratic National Convention in a speech rejecting the division of America into red states and blue states, which President Obama specifically referenced in the rousing conclusion to his re-election victory speech you can see here.
We are not as divided as our politics suggests. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions, and we remain more than a collection of red states and blue states. We are and forever will be the United States of America. And together, with your help and God's grace, we will continue our journey forward and remind the world just why it is that we live in the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, America. God bless you. God bless these United States.
That's so sweet, but of course not everyone was happy about the outcome of the election, as you can see, for example, from the reaction that same night from satirical conservative pundit Stephen Colbert in this clip.
Well, fine, America, it's your funeral. We tried to warn you about this guy. We had a multimedia empire telling you he was an America-hating, socialism-loving, anti-capitalist wealth redistributor who was possibly lying about his birth religion.
Smearing of President Obama from Fox News media empire that lost and Andrew Sullivan. The other predictable excuse from some conservatives that Romney wasn't conservative enough, as you can see in this clip.
I'll tell you the problem, because we weren't conservative enough, okay? You know the truth. Conservatism cannot fail. You can only fail conservatism, okay? And they did not field a true conservative out there.
They fielded a severe conservative in his own words.
Oh, that guy was flip-flopping all over the place. I never believed him. I never believed that guy.
Well, the way
he's a Massachusetts moderate. I said that from the beginning, Andrew.
Oh, I remember, yes,
Check the tape.
Yes, we'll all have to be checking tapes. But no, Paul Ryan was the way in which he persuaded the Republican base that he's one of them. I mean, he had the Republican base. He did not lose this election because he wasn't conservative enough. He lost the moderates in the middle in places like Ohio, in places like Florida, where he just couldn't afford to.
And conservative Andrew Sullivan is right, and if Republicans don't realize he's right, it could cost them, as progressive pundit Karen Finney pointed out on MSNBC's Now with Alex Wagner in post-election analysis here.
I think what you're going to see, unfortunately, with the Republican Party is you're going to see it's going to be more, well, we needed a true conservative. That was the problem. It wasn't our ideas. It was, you know, it was that we had this guy and we tried to make him into a real conservative. And I think that's a mistake, because that's not where the country is. That doesn't go to what Richard was talking about before in terms of that's not how you expand the map. By going more, you know, cuckoo crazy to the right, that's not going to get you there.
And that's right, too, because the reason President Barack Obama became the first president to get a majority of the popular vote twice since Ronald Reagan and won all the swing states but North Carolina is because on tax cuts for the rich, the auto bailout, immigration policy, and social issues like marriage equality and reproductive rights, the Republicans went way out of the mainstream, turning off, for example, women, as ABC's Cokie Roberts pointed out, even before the election on This Week with George Stephanopoulos in this clip.
Particularly because of women. And this is a place, Pennsylvania is a perfect place where this is a problem, because you have those Philadelphia suburbs, and that's where all this conversation about contraception and rape and all of that are having a hold. And, you know, it's very interesting because women have not traditionally voted on those issues. They've voted on economic issues. But when you ask African Americans and Hispanics what issues they vote on, they say the economy as well. And yet, they have turned off the Republican Party in huge numbers because of civil rights and
Governor Romney's going to those suburbs today.
I think women are having the same reaction this time around, where they are beginning to feel unwelcome in the Republican Party. And if that happens, that's a big problem.
And it's not just that women and minorities feel increasingly unwelcome in the Republican Party. It's also the extreme Republican position opposing tax increases on the rich as part of an overall deficit reduction plan, as Newark Mayor Cory Booker pointed out, also in pre-election analysis on NBC's Meet the Press in this clip.
The part where I got fired up, because I'm not reflexively partisan, was during the Republican primaries when they asked those candidates, would they accept $9 of tax cuts for $1?
10 to 1. 10 to 1. Yeah.
And all of them said, no, you cannot solve this economy without a balanced approach.
And Bill Clinton is making the sale in the
That's why
the
Obama's a better choice, because he's got a balanced approach.
And Obama not only has a balanced approach on taxing the rich and cutting spending to cut the deficit that Romney couldn't match because of the Republican primaries, but Romney's extreme stances from the primaries on immigration, the auto bailout, and social issues so essential to the Republican brand this year also hurt Romney in the general election, as even Republican Joe Scarborough seemed to admit on that same Meet the Press panel here.
For me, it's a Republican looking at the Republican Party. It was a horrifying primary process that damaged the Republican brand. Secondly, a terrible, I think, Republican convention where Mitt Romney didn't make the turn to the middle.
And that's right. It was Mitt Romney's own failure to move to the middle, mainly because of the right-wing Republican primaries that caused his defeat, more than any negative advertising from Democrats, as Democratic pollster Anna Greenberg argued, also in pre-election analysis on CBS's Face the Nation in this clip.
Mitt Romney had to run as a right-wing Tea Party guy in the primary, so it wasn't just Democratic money. He defined himself that way, and the Republican platform was about as conservative as ever been, so it wasn't just Democratic money that sort of created that image.
And that's right, too. It was because Mitt Romney had to run as a right-wing Tea Party guy that he was unable to sway enough voters in almost all the swing states, a fact that surprisingly snuck onto Fox News' broadcast the night of the election from moderate Democrat from Indiana Evan Bayh, who talked about the losing Republican Senate candidate from his state, Richard Murdoch, famous for saying pregnancy from rape is part of God's plan, and the similar famous legitimate rape comments from losing Republican Todd Akin in neighboring Missouri, with Evan Bayh coming to the conclusion you can see here.
The Tea Party element is very helpful to the Republican Party when it's part of a broader coalition of the Republican Party. When it becomes the face of the Republican Party, and particularly when individuals make, provocative statements like this, it's not at all helpful to the Republican Party. And so, in our own case here in Indiana, it just reconfirmed Mr. Murdoch's a fine man, I'm sure, but he had also said that Social Security, for example, in his opinion, was unconstitutional. Well, most Americans just would not agree with that. He'd also said that there was too much compromise in Washington. We needed more confrontation. I think most Americans think there's too much fighting, too much inflexibility in Washington. So, again, I think in some ways, the party that succeeds in our politics is that party which is most successful in harnessing the energy of their base, but not letting them take over the entire message, and instead focusing upon moderates, independents, those swing voters who really do, they're not very prominent in primaries, but they really do determine the outcome of general elections.
And that's the real message that Republicans should be getting from the election results, that demographics are against them if they don't moderate their positions on taxes, immigration, the auto bailout, and marriage and reproductive justice. But as to whether Republicans will get that message, well, Democratic strategist James Carville, who helped Bill Clinton get elected, was on Real Time with Bill Maher after the election and gave this colorful analysis.
Sometimes in the South, people will say, in order to get that boy's attention, sometimes you got to hit him upside the head with a 2x4. Well, the sound you heard on election night was pine on skull. They got hit upside the head with a 2x4. And they're not going to get into contraception anymore. They're going to find something else. And
I don't know.
Now, even Sean Hannity's now for immigration. The pine hit the skull. They got that boy's attention now, I'll tell you
I think that's right, though, of course, conservatives could keep making up excuses, as parodied by Stephen Colbert in his post-election interview of MSNBC's Rachel Maddow in this clip.
It was Hurricane Sandy. It was Sandy that did it.
No, it wasn't.
It was Hurricane Sandy. It was Hurricane Sandy that did it. It was people worried about the nor'easter that came the day after the election that did it.
But if the right is going to look at what just happened and say, you know what, but for the storm, we did everything right and the country loves us,
yeah.
Democrats are going to be very happy with all the next elections, too.
I guess that's really the true test. No matter how much misinformation the right-wing crazies feed themselves in their Fox News echo chamber bubble, when elections come around, the reality of America and the demographics of America can't be denied, and like when Romney was stung by the Fox News Libya lie in the second debate, Republicans are sometimes unable to escape reality, no matter how much Fox News they watch, I think, but I want to know what you think. Did President Barack Obama win re-election because Mitt Romney was driven to take too many conservative positions by the right-wing crazies in the Republican Party? And if you do, will Republicans get this message from the election despite the inevitable excuses in the Fox News misinformation bubble?
I YouTube, you decide.